3 to 5 tenths. Every straight, every circuit. That is not an estimate from a pundit, it is not a lap time model from a YouTube channel, and it is not me guessing. That is the number the driver himself put on Ferrari's problem, on camera, on Sunday evening at Zandvoort, without being asked to quantify anything. Here is exactly what he said to Sky Sports Formula 1 after finishing fourth in the Dutch Grand Prix. "We brought a bit of an upgrade here," Hamilton said. "We're just chipping away at it all the time. This first half of the season, we've been losing 3 to 5 tenths on the straight depending on which track we go to, and that's a hard deficit to overcome just through the corners. But we are close. Drivers do not usually do this. Ask any of them about performance and you get feelings. The car felt better, we're not quite there yet, there's more to come." What you almost never get is a range, in tenths, attached to a specific part of the lap, given voluntarily on a Sunday evening by a man who has just been beaten by a car. He is quicker than through the corners. So let's take the numbers seriously and work out what it actually costs, because once you convert it, everything else about Ferrari's season stops being mysterious. Subscribe first, because the next race is the one circuit on the calendar where this number decides everything. And I would rather you had the arithmetic before it happens. And put your country in the comments. I ask every week, I read all of them, and it is consistently the best thing down there. Start with what the number is not. It is not a claim that Ferrari has a slow car. Hamilton said it himself in the same breath, "We are close," and Zandvoort proved it. He qualified fifth, roughly 3 tenths off pole across the entire lap, having been nowhere on Friday. Leclerc finished second in Saturday's sprint, ahead of the reigning world champion. Ferrari was fighting for a podium on Sunday, and Hamilton was still attacking for third on the final lap. So, the deficit is not making the car uncompetitive. It is doing something more specific and more corrosive than that, and to see it, you have to think about where lap time actually lives. A lap has two kinds of time in it. There is time you gain through the corners, which comes from downforce, from mechanical grip, from a driver's confidence in the balance. And there is time you gain on the straights, which comes from power and from drag. They both count identically on the timing screen. A tenth is a tenth. But they do not both count identically in a race, and this is the entire point of this video. Corner time is private. It gets you a lap time in qualifying and it helps you pull away from a car behind you. Straight line time is public. It is the only currency you can spend to actually get past somebody. If your advantage is in the corners and your deficit is on the straights, you can be genuinely faster than the car in front of you over a full lap, and still have no mechanism to go around it. That is Ferrari's season in one sentence. And it is why Hamilton chose to put a number on it rather than complain about it. Now follow the chain, because there is a second piece of evidence from the same weekend that makes this concrete. Hamilton also told Sky, after qualifying on Saturday, that all the Mercedes-powered cars were ahead of him, and that Ferrari knows it has a bit of a deficit on power. Then he added that Ferrari's race pace should be better, and that the car is better for the race. Look at the grid he was describing. Lando Norris on pole in a McLaren, George Russell second, and Kimi Antonelli third for Mercedes, Oscar Piastri fourth in the second McLaren, Hamilton fifth, Leclerc sixth. McLaren and Mercedes locked out the first two rows, and the common factor between those four cars is the power unit in the back of them. That is the driver identifying the shape of the problem himself, publicly, by naming which cars are ahead and what they have in common. I am not going to tell you why that gap exists, because I do not know, and neither does anybody outside those two engine departments. Power unit development in this era is conducted behind doors that do not open for journalists. What I can tell you is that the pattern Hamilton described on Saturday matched the order on Saturday, and that he attached a figure to it on Sunday. So convert 3 to 5 tenths into something you can hold. Take the middle of that range and apply it across a season. Over a qualifying lap, it is the difference between the second row and the fourth. That is not abstract. At Zandvoort, Hamilton qualified fifth. Piastri was fourth, 3 tenths ahead of him on the timing sheet, and Antonelli was third. Give Hamilton back 4 tenths of straight line time and he is not fifth. He is in the top 3, on a circuit where the top 3 is effectively the podium because overtaking does not happen. Now apply it to the race, which is where it compounds. The great myth about a power deficit is that it costs you a little bit of time per lap, and you tot it up at the end. It does not work like that. It costs you the ability to convert everything else you have. On Sunday, Hamilton spent the last 15 laps of the Dutch Grand Prix behind George Russell, on fresher tires, In a car he was demonstrably faster than in the corners. He put a genuine lunge on him at Tarzan on lap 69. He got a run when Russell went out of shape through turn 10. He attacked again after the final restart with 2 laps to go. He never got through. Russell defended well, and I am not taking that away from him. But watch the shape of it. Every attempt Hamilton made was a corner entry move because a corner entry move was the only kind available to him. He had no straight to use. On a circuit with a long start-finish straight and a car with 3 to 5/10ths of straight line advantage, that pass happens on lap 66 and nobody makes a video about it. Fourth instead of third, 3 points on an afternoon where Hamilton went into the weekend 50 points behind Antonelli with 12 rounds remaining. And here is the sentence from the same interview that ties the number to the championship, because he did the arithmetic himself. To win championships, he said, you have to pick up every point. Every point. At a 50-point deficit with a car that cannot overtake, that is not a slogan. It is a method, and the method has a single point of failure, which is that every position you fail to take on a Sunday afternoon is a position you cannot recover on a later Sunday afternoon. There is no later. There is only track position. And track position on a circuit is decided by qualifying, by strategy, and by whether you can go around somebody. Ferrari currently has a problem with the third one. Now, before we go further, here is the question for you, and I want it as a vote, because you split almost exactly down the middle on this last time. If you are running Ferrari with 12 rounds to go, do you keep pushing development on this year's car to chase that straight line gap and try to keep Hamilton in a live championship? Or do you accept the deficit, bank the points you can, and put everything into next season? Like this video for push now. Comment for build for next year. There is no free answer, which is exactly why it is worth asking you. Subscribe while you are down there, because the next part is what Ferrari is actually doing about it. Because they are doing something, and Zandvoort was the evidence. Ferrari arrived at the Dutch Grand Prix with an upgrade package. According to Grande Premio's report on the 21st of August, that included a new floor and new exhaust systems for both cars. Planet F1 noted that Ferrari's upgrade listing on the FIA documents for the weekend covered 5 different elements. Hamilton confirmed the package himself in that Sunday interview. "We brought a bit of an upgrade here," he said. "We're just chipping away at it all the time. Chipping away." That is a very specific phrase, and I do not think it was casual. It is not the language of a breakthrough. It is the language of a team closing a gap in increments, weekend after weekend, none of which individually changes anything. And there is a detail from Saturday that shows exactly where the chipping is aimed. Scuderia fans reported that Ferrari had identified hybrid energy gains after narrowly missing sprint pole at Zandvoort. Now, I am going to be careful here, because I do not have the technical detail behind that report, and I am not going to invent any. What I can say is what the phrase points at. Energy management is one of the areas where straight-line performance is decided in this generation of car, and a team looking for straight-line time that cannot simply build a more powerful engine. Mid-season looks at how it deploys what it already has. That is Ferrari's route, not a new engine. Deployment, drag, and floor performance chipped at race by race. Then the timeline moves, and this is where the number becomes urgent rather than interesting. Because there is a second reason this matters that has nothing to do with lap time, and it played out in front of everybody on Sunday. Between lap 35 and lap 43, Hamilton sat behind Charles Leclerc, his own teammate, on a tire roughly 4 laps fresher. He said on the radio that he was quicker and that his tires were better. Then, still stuck, the line everybody has heard by now. "Great way of wasting time, guys. Good job." Ferrari eventually resolved it. Vasseur explained the strategy afterwards to Grand Prix 247, naming the traffic the team was managing and putting the cost of Hamilton following his teammate at roughly 1 second. Now put the two facts side by side. A car with 3 to 5/10ths of straight-line deficit is a car that cannot pass its own teammate either. Every internal traffic problem Ferrari has this season is made worse by the same number. On a team with straight-line advantage, a faster driver behind a slower one resolves itself within 2 laps without anybody on the pit wall having to make a decision at all. On a team without it, every single instance becomes a management problem that has to be talked through while the tires go off. The deficit is not just costing Ferrari positions against other teams, it is costing Ferrari the ability to solve its own problems quietly. Now let me put the counter-argument properly, because it is stronger than most people give it credit for. Nothing about Sunday proves Ferrari would have had a podium with more straight-line speed. Antonelli finished second with a Mercedes engine and Piastri finished 6th with the same engine. behind both Ferraris. Power is not the only variable, and it is clearly not decisive on its own. Ferrari finished 4th and 5th at Zandvoort with 2 cars in a podium fight, which is a genuinely competitive afternoon. And Leclerc took a sprint podium the day before on the same power unit. There is also a fair question about whether Zandvoort was the right circuit to be making this argument at all. It has one significant straight and a great many corners. If a straight line deficit was decisive anywhere, it should have been least decisive there. And Hamilton still qualified 5th and finished 4th. And Hamilton himself framed the deficit as a range that varies by circuit. Depending on which track we go to, he said, which means the number is not constant, and on some weekends it is closer to 3 than 5. So this is not a car that cannot win. Ferrari has won this season, and Hamilton has won in it. But here is where the counter-argument runs out. The deficit does not have to be decisive in a championship. At 50 points down with 12 rounds left, Hamilton does not need the fastest car. He needs to convert every afternoon at the maximum available, and the number he named is precisely the thing that stops maximum conversion on afternoons, where he does not qualify at the front. So, what do we actually know, and what are we guessing? We know the figure because he gave it. 3 to 5 tenths on the straight, varying by circuit across the first half of the season. We know he identified the Mercedes-powered cars as the ones ahead of him at Zandvoort. We know Ferrari brought a floor and exhaust package to the Dutch Grand Prix. We know he described the improvement process as chipping away. We know he could not pass George Russell across 15 laps on much fresher rubber. What we do not know is how that figure was measured internally, whether it is a peak figure or an average, what proportion of it is power and what proportion is drag, or whether Ferrari's engineers would recognize the number if you put it to them. It is a driver's figure, given in a live interview, and drivers work from the data they are shown. I am treating it as an honest report of what he has been told and what he feels, and not as a published engineering measurement, because that is what it is. Is Ferrari's straight line deficit the thing that will decide whether Hamilton is in this championship in November? I think that is a legitimate question, and I think he made it a reasonable one to ask by naming a number rather than a feeling. It is not proof that the title is lost, and I am not going to sell you one. 50 points in 12 rounds is a large gap and a lot of racing, but there is something in the way he said it that I keep returning to. He did not say the car is slow. He did not blame the engine department, he did not name anybody, and he did not use the deficit as an excuse for finishing 4th. He gave a number, said it is a hard deficit to overcome just through the corners, and then said we are close. That is a driver telling you exactly where the problem is so that you can watch him work around it, and telling his own team in public and in the politest available language precisely what needs fixing. In the same interview, he said his goal is to try and lead this team to the championship, and that there is work to do. The work is the number, and here is why the next 2 weeks matter more than any weekend since the season started. The next round is Monza. It is the fastest circuit on the Formula One calendar. It is straights, chicanes, and more straights, and it is the one venue on the schedule where a 3 to 5 tenths straight line deficit is not a component of the lap. It is the lap, Ferrari's home race, 100,000 people in the grandstands, the single worst circuit on earth for the specific problem their driver just named out loud on television. If the chipping away has produced anything, Monza is where it shows, and if it has not, that will be visible from the first practice session, and everybody in that grandstand will be able to read it on a timing screen. So predict it for me. At Monza, is the gap closer to 3 tenths or closer to 5? Put your answer below, because I want to see who called it when we get the sector times. Subscribe so that breakdown lands in front of you. Hit like if you want it done exactly like this one, and until the next one.